Well, it is my pleasure to welcome Tony Lopes to the show. He is a first generation American, a real estate professional. He's a best selling author. He's a coach and he's a speaker. He's an amazing person. You're going to love him. I'm really looking forward to this interview today. His investments and understanding of the markets and economics allowed him to retire at the young age of 44. Think about that. How would you like to retire at the age of 44 or have retired at the age of 44? That's an incredible feat. What drives Tony is sharing his knowledge and experience that he loves to share and enjoy doing the things he loves to do, which is create financial freedom, teach people about financial freedom, write about it. That's why he's a speaker, an author, a coach. It's really what my understanding is drives him. So with that, Tony, welcome to the show.
Marco, thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I had a lot of information in my mind about you and in front of me, and I'm trying to like just kind of summarize it, to create a bio, if you will, as I'm introducing you. So hopefully I didn't butcher it, and hopefully I didn't miss too much.
No, you did a beautiful job. Hopefully, I live up to all that goodness there.
Yeah, well, I know you have, and what I know about you. So this is going to be great. I want to ask you a question about yourself to just so the audience has a better feel for who you are and where you came from. But then we'll talk a little bit about your book that you released last year called Freedom at Risk. I think it's a brilliant title. And the content in the book is really, really good. So I'm excited. I'm excited to finish reading it, and I'm going to encourage my readers or my listeners and viewers to purchase a copy or download it somewhere. But before we get into that, how tell us how you became interested in this whole topic, which you wrote about of personal and financial freedom, and then you even talk about macroeconomics, which I geek out on. So, give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you way back to, really it started with my parents. My parents migrated to this country from Europe. They came here poor. I did not grow up with money. So folks out there who think I got started in real estate with a whole bunch of money, I did not. Right. So I offer that up as encouragement for those folks that are, like me back then. I was scrambling to kind of pull together a nest egg to be able to go and start investing in real estate to get more freedom. But it really started with my parents. They came here with little in their pocket as in way of money. And so they, shared with me and my sisters, really a mantra of go to school, get a great education, you'll get a great job, and you'll be taken care of forever. That was their thought process. That was their mantra to say, okay, follow this and you'll be set. You will be good for life. And so me as a kid, as a young man, that's what I did. I went to school, right? I had got two great degrees. I got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, which is a great degree. You can do so much with that. And then I also went on to get my MBA degree, right? And so I had those two degrees. So okay, check that block right there. And then I got a great job and worked there for some period of time, transitioned to another company, and after 2 years I ended up getting laid off. And I was like, wait a minute, this was never part of the mantra that my parents handed down to me. Nowhere in go to school, get a great education, get a job, get laid off, right? Was part of the mantra. It wasn't in there. And so that was really, as a young man, I was like 24 years old, Marco. And I was just like really shooken by that. And said, wait a minute, there has to be a better way. There has to be a different way. And so maybe some of your audience, some of your listeners out there can resonate with this, whether they have immigrant parents, maybe they're first or second generation, just like me. Maybe they got laid off just like me, right? So maybe some of this resonates with them, but it was certainly an inflection point in my life where I said, wait a minute, for me to have, and freedom has always been very strong, like in me. I want the most freedom I can get. And so that really jeopardized my freedom. And I said, I have to do something different. I can't just let my freedom, let my financial independence be based on one income stream. I just couldn't do that going forward. So that's why I ended up, I did have to get another job, which was okay. I wasn't financially independent at the time. I did get another job to be able to pay the bills and whatnot. But then very quickly, I transitioned to, finding how to get capital together to be able to purchase my first building. And, I didn't start by buying apartment complexes. We're buying apartment complexes now, which is great. We're serving our investors because, like you had said, I like to serve. I like to serve my investors, my community, my students, whatever it is. I want to be able to add a lot of value to their lives. And so, but I just started out small. Again, I want to encourage folks, you don't have to go big. If it's a duplex, if it's a condo that's going to be able to cash flow, if it's a single family home that you can purchase as a rental or an Airbnb that's going to cash flow for you, take a look at doing that to be able to start cash flowing a little bit, and then maybe buy another one, or buy, if you bought a single family, maybe next buy a duplex or a triplex or something like that, right? You don't have to go like super mega big right off the bat. And so that's what I did. I ended up buying a quad, a 4 unit building.
Mhm.
And then I springboard from there. I did some other multifamilies, again, small duplex, triplex, 5 unit building. I did some new construction for a while there, around 2007, 2008. That was an interesting time, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So
very.
I did some new construction, right? So I have a lot of experience, with good markets and bad markets. And so, yeah, so that's really where I come from in terms of my background, how I cut my teeth, got started in real estate, got started with some financial freedom, is by realizing after getting laid off, this single trick pony of a just one, income stream wasn't going to cut it for me, because it could
Right.
go at any possible time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry to hear about the job thing, but sometimes that's a blessing in disguise because it puts you on a different path, but it's a better path and you don't know it at the time. And now all of a sudden you have more interest in learning about financial freedom. And now you start, learning from other people,
Yeah.
successful people, reading books, and you figure out, oh, damn, I need to invest. What do I invest in? Well, real estate's a great asset class. So let's look at that. And you get your first single family home or your first quadplex in your case, and you build from there. And you call it small. I don't think I want the listeners to know that's a big deal. It's not small. I mean, maybe it's small in terms of the asset size relative to a commercial building or an apartment building or whatever. But look, you and I both know there's a lot of people who are financially free and successful with a portfolio of single family homes. It could be
Yep.
whatever you want, whatever resonates. It could be an apartment building, it could be just a portfolio of singles and doubles. Um, the important thing is to learn what you can and take action and just do it. And then, build the team around you to help you achieve those goals. So you mentioned financial freedom multiple times, probably a dozen times, and you've probably learned a lot, many lessons over the years, as I have as well. So maybe talk about some of the key strategies or even the lessons that you've learned that helped you achieve that financial freedom.
Yeah, sure. So, there's a lot of different ways, and I do talk about this in my book. My book almost reads that, there's part one that describes, how our freedoms are at risk, and there's a lot of different ways: political, the education system that doesn't fully teach us what we truly need to know, coming out of it. There's society. Society, we ourselves steal our own freedoms. We leave it up to others, mainly the politicians, to fix things. Well, no, it's us. It's within our community. It's me and my neighbor, right? We need to fix things. We can't just always be turning to the government for for that handout, so to speak, or for that helping hand. So there's a lot of different ways our freedoms are at risk, and so I explained that in part one, just to kind of get folks in the mindset of really understanding that piece. And then in part two of the book, I talk a lot, and it reads as an a la carte package because, you know, granted, I talk to a lot of different people. Not everybody is all about real estate. Some people just don't want to do real estate, and that's okay. I talk about using a business, right? I have a business, you have a business. I talk about having a business to be able to get additional financial freedom, right? Create some cash flow for yourself. I talk about asymmetric plays, right? And a good example of that has been Bitcoin, right? You could have bought Bitcoin many, many years ago. $1,000 in Bitcoin years ago would be probably millions of dollars today in Bitcoin. That's an asymmetric play. Whereas if you invested $1,000 and you lost it, it's $1,000. It's probably not going to, make you broke. But if in which it did, it went much, higher. Now $1,000 turns into a multi-million dollar account, right? So there's an asymmetric play for you. Um, and so as I talk about a lot of these different things, I also talk about um, value in ourselves. Like, and this is especially important for young people to, I think, understand. The more value you bring to the table, the more financial freedom you're going to have at the end of the day, right? If you're just a one trick pony and all you know how to do is change the oil in the car, and that's a very valuable service if you need your oil changed. But if that's the only thing you know how to do, chances are you're not going to get paid much more than probably $25 an hour, right?
Right.
But if you know how to do many more things, you know how to change the oil in the car, but you also use that because you know cars, you like cars, you start a YouTube channel, you start, creating content, and now you have a YouTube channel with, 100,000 subscribers. Now you're creating an income stream from YouTube because now you have a ad-based social media. Now you get an income stream from YouTube because you're educating people on cars because you know cars, right? Now maybe you go off and you set up some either education or write your own book or your own pamphlet or something, right? You leverage that one thing to be able to create multiple sources of income because now you're that much more valuable to somebody, right? I go out there and I say, and the only reason why, you know, I, some people say, Tony, how did you get started in syndication? Did you create your own team? Do you raise your own capital? And da, da, da. I mean, my claim to fame with syndication, so to speak, is I bring a very necessary, important component to syndication. I can do the underwriting, but it's not necessarily the thing I love to do, but I can do it. I don't like to raise capital. I can do it, but it's not necessarily the thing I really enjoy doing. I enjoy property management. I love going out to properties. I love getting my boots dirty, walking around a property to see what it looks like, see the condensers for the AC units, walk on the roof, see what that looks like, look at the tenant base, look at the condition of the units. That's my extreme value that I bring to a syndicator because there's other people on my team who they don't like doing that, nor do they have the knowledge base to look at a roof and know whether it can be repaired or it needs to be replaced, right? The same thing with, the mechanicals in a building.
Mhm.
They don't know, which is okay. That's where I come in. That's the value that I provide. So when I
Mhm.
look across like what I do, yes, I do coaching. I do, syndications because I bring the value from a property management perspective. I've written books, so I have value there. I get on stage, I talk to, hundreds of people because there's value there to be able to share with those folks, right? I come on YouTube channels like this great one here to be able to share some value, hopefully some value that people will walk away with real tangible. Let me go do this and be able to profit from it in some way. So I really hope folks take a moment to really think deep down in terms of the value they bring to the world each and every day. And if all you can do is write one or two things on the paper, maybe you got to think about what else you can do to grow that list because the more value you bring to the world, the more financial freedom you will ultimately have.
Yeah, that is so very, very true. Um, I want to drill down at that a little bit. You wrote this really good book. One of the things that you touch on, and you're talking about it now, is we've got personal freedoms and financial freedoms, and I see them as interconnected because uh, one enables the other, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, in your opinion, how connected or interconnected are those two? And do you have to prioritize them if you're just getting started, or if you're just building your investment portfolio?
So they are somewhat interconnected, as interconnected as an individual wants them to be. Like for example, I have a neighbor who they would be very happy living in the middle of the woods, so to speak, living off the land and having tons of freedom as they define it, right? We all define freedom differently. That would be their freedom, living off the land, serenity in a very scenic place, nobody around them, they would define that as freedom. And that would be okay. And they probably don't need a lot of money, cash flow, to live that way. Um, and they would be perfectly happy with that freedom that they've created. Me, on the other hand, I like to travel. I like to go overseas. I like to go to different states. I like to do different things, have different experiences. That requires me to have a certain cash flow each and every month to go buy airline tickets and reserve hotels and all that shenanigans that comes along with it, right? There's a cost associated with that. But for me, that's a freedom that I enjoy, the freedom of traveling where I want to go, when I want to go, at certain levels of travel, right? Um, that's how I define freedom, right? So it's really a case by case basis. And that's where, in the book, in part two, I do distinguish between personal freedoms and financial freedoms. You can bring those together, but not everybody is cut from the cloth of, hey, they really study the financial freedom aspect of it. I share, like, for personal freedoms, just starting a garden in your backyard,
Right.
right? To be able to plant a garden and know where your fresh fruits and vegetables are coming from, to be able to go out on an afternoon, pick some lettuce, some tomatoes, some cucumber, and be able to create a salad for dinner and know where those vegetables came from. There's a certain amount of, peace and serenity that comes along with that. Not to mention, when you're in the garden, weeding, watering, you're away from the shenanigans of social media. You're away
Yeah.
from, Fox News and CNN and,
Yeah.
the different things. You're playing in your garden. You have serenity. You have a quiet place to think things through. There's so many things that are beckoning our attention. It's we all know it. It's insane. So being able to have a garden, I just said two things there that brings such immense freedom to us just by having a simple garden in our backyard.
I agree. And that's something I'm guilty of. I don't take enough time for me. I'm always addressing other people's questions, concerns, needs. I'm everywhere all the time, but it's not for me. So I'm horrible at that. I got to get
Oh,
better.
I'm the same way. I no, I get it. I like to serve. I like to help people. You're the same way. You're cut from the same cloth. I do derive a lot of energy from that, and I know you do
Yeah.
too. But yeah, there's a certain time when we have to. We should allow ourselves some amount of time to kind of shut down and, take care of our own mental health and physical health. That's important for us because
Yeah.
otherwise, if we're no good, we're not going to be able to serve at
Yeah.
the best capacity.
So I'm just curious, real quick. What inspired you to write the book, Freedom at Risk? I mean, was there a driving motivation, or you just wanted to get your thoughts and stuff on paper?
That's a great question, and that really the behind the scenes to it is simply this. So I don't have any kids, right? But I have a niece and I have some nephews, and I know they're not getting the education out of the school system that they should,
Mm,
nor do they have the experience of time. I'm 50 years old, so I have the experience of time being on this planet for 50 years. I've seen a lot. I've seen a trend of things. They don't have that, right? And that's okay because they're still young. I'm not saying they're bad kids. They just don't have that experience, that exposure yet. So what I wanted to do, um, you know, my goal was really to write 20 or 30 pages of, this is how our freedoms are at risk, and these are some things you can do. And that's why I broke it up, really personal freedoms and financial freedoms, because not all my niece and nephews are geared towards the financial piece, right? Not everybody is cut that way. So I wanted to give them some good, things they could read through and really take action on. So really, that's Marco. That's really how it started. Me sitting at a coffee shop with my laptop, where I thought I was going to write 20 or 30 pages for my family. Like 6 months later, I was at like 35,000 words, and I was like, this isn't a 30-page thing anymore. This is a book. And I
Yeah.
really had to switch gears at that point. That was really you would think, gee, Tony, after like, 100 pages, you would think it's a book, right? I was just going so fast and furious with it. I wasn't really thinking. I was just creating that content that I thought would be valuable for them.
Yeah.
So I had to switch gears. I had to get an editor. I had to get a publisher. I had to get graphic designers, right? Because none of this was like, I don't know how to do that. So I had to put a team together to do that,
Yeah.
which was fun as far as an experience. Um, but really, this book started in that way, writing it for my family. So as I say, it comes from a place of a place of love. Really, is how it all started.
Yeah. I love it. Well, so before we started recording this interview, we spoke just briefly about, the concept of renter nation, air quotes. But it's a term that's been used for quite a while now. And I want to say years because, I talk about it on the show often, how we have a housing deficit. Interest rates have been going up, affordability is down, people can't afford to get their own place or move out, they're bunking up. And we're just kind of being driven, or have been driven, to a nation, if you will, where we have more and more renters and fewer homeowners. And there's nothing to say that that's good or bad, right or wrong. It is what it is. It's just a factor that ties into um, economics and maybe some politics and whatever else, depending on where you live. So, long story short, talk to us a little bit about why we should be interested in the concept of this renter nation topic.
Yeah.
And further, maybe if you could drill down into some detail, like what are the implications for us and our investments?
Yeah, and so I don't necessarily share this whole thing of renter nation for to drive people to become landlords or investors. I mean, there's so many tangents that this can go into. If you want to start a business around property management, right? You don't want to own any buildings, or you don't have the capital to really buy buildings. You want to be a property manager. This is a great time to start that business, because there's going to be many, many more renters who are going to need that service, right? And so when you kind of walk through the whole theory of renter nation, there's a lot of tangential businesses that come off of that.
Mhm.
So, as I, think about renter nation, there's a lot of different factors that push us in that direction. And maybe somebody can dispute one or two, but as I go through my laundry list, it's like there's no disputing that this is actually a trend, and it's going to continue to keep happening, right? So, one of the things I point to is this huge federal deficit that we're in right now. So much interest is being paid daily on our debt. That interest is coming from somewhere. It's coming from our tax dollars, and it's coming from, really the American people. And at the federal level, when that interest is paid, that creates a void of funding that can now flow down, that can't flow down to the states, right? When we didn't have these huge ballooned interest payments, there was federal funds that could flow down to the states for healthcare, for education services, for welfare programs. That funding could flow down to the states. We're actually starting to see that, because I work with some different programs. We're actually starting to see some of that dry up. And so you look at those programs, and they're not going to go away. The funding is going to come from somewhere. And I think a lot of us as investors, we've already seen where some of that funding is going to come from, and that's going to come from increased property tax. We as property owners are going to continue to see property taxes go up. I know in the last year, some of my properties have gone up 25% in property tax. It's
Wow.
it's it's insane, right? So I'm definitely paying my fair share. So when you look at that and through the lens of affordability, even if interest rates come down, which would be great, even if the price of a home came down some, which I don't think it will, um, this thing of property taxes is always going to be hanging over your head, and you don't really have control over it. When you buy your home, you may think my property tax is going to be $10,000 every year. But then you get that assessment in the mail, and then it says, well, your property tax just went up to 12,000. And then a couple of years later, it's now 15,000, right? This is not something that you have control over. And so you may own your home. At the end of the day, you can own your home outright, free and clear of any mortgage. But I look at some of my own homes that I own, and I'm like, even if I own it outright, I still need to come up with $1,000 a month for property tax in perpetuity. And
Yeah.
that's the lowest it's probably ever going to be. It's only going higher than that. So, in terms of affordability, people being able to buy a home, property taxes is going to be a problem going forward. And that will drive towards people being renters for longer. And an actually interesting statistic, I just saw, if I wish I recalled where it came from, but the average age of a first time home buyer, 37 years old.
Wow.
Average age of a
Higher.
first time home buyer.
Yeah. Higher than the number I was thinking, but
So
that's
what does that
crazy.
mean? It means they're renters for longer, right? If their first time home buyer is at 37, they've been renting for longer than previous home buyers. So that's just a trend we're going to continue to see happen, and so that's part of the financial piece that I talk about around renter nation. But there's also a societal piece, and I find this pretty interesting. When I look at the macro space, I look at it and I say, there's things that exist like Instacart, where people don't have to go and buy their groceries. They just order it up online, right? And I'm not saying this is good and bad. Just like you said, Marco, this isn't good or bad. This is just what is. And that's the world of investing that I like to operate in. Not, the world of make believe, how Tony Lopes thinks the world should operate. No,
Right.
it's what is. And so there's this Instacart thing that exists. And so there's been a growing trend of people who don't want to go to the grocery store to buy their groceries, which is okay. Furthermore, there's these things that exist called Uber Eats and Grubhub and DoorDash, where people order up food already prepared. Not only do they not want to go to the grocery store to buy the food, they don't want to make it at home. And again, that's fine. But when I look at this through the lens of Renter Nation, that group of folks who are using these resources to order up food or groceries, what do you think their inclination is, their slant towards spending the weekend painting the trim on the house, cleaning the gutters, mowing the lawn, or cleaning the flower bed? Chances are, if they don't want to go to the grocery store and buy food, which is a necessary, thing, uh, chances are they're not going to want to do those homeowner things of cleaning the gutters, painting the trim, and mowing the lawn. Right? That falls further down on the priority list, which drives them more towards falling into the renter category. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just what is. So when I look at it through a financial standpoint, property taxes are going higher. There's a lot of things driving financially us towards more renters, and then societal reasons driving us towards more renters, right? And there's a lot of other things. There's energy. Energy is getting more expensive. We've already
Hmm.
passed peak fossil fuel production. I love talking about this stuff. I get so excited. I'm sorry. I'll end it with this one, but
No,
we're
you're
already
fine.
past peak fossil fuel production. We passed that a couple of years ago. So every barrel of oil that we pull out of ground uh, costs us more each and every year. So what does that mean to a homeowner? If you have to pave your driveway or if you have to seal coat your driveway, that's all oil based. If you have to replace your shingle roof, that's oil based. The fibers in your carpet, your appliances, all that stuff, the fundamental building block is oil, right? So all those things get more expensive. So home ownership just gets more expensive. And again, it's just another reason, energy being a reason to push people more towards that renter pool versus an
Yeah.
owner.
I would take some of what you said even a step further. The fact that people are not choosing to mow their lawn or go to the grocery store or do, all these other things that maybe you and I considered more quote unquote normal. A lot of people, because things are more expensive, because of inflation, because we're in renter nation, because affordability is low, they're being driven into this gig economy. So a lot of these
Mm,
people have second jobs, third jobs. They might have a full time 9 to 5 job, but in the evenings and weekends they might be doing Uber Eats, delivering, or
yeah,
doing ride share or something, right? So when you look at it that way, it's like the problem is there, but the problem is worse than you just described it, because these people who can't afford to do the things, or do the things that you and I think are normal, they're out doing second jobs, third jobs to pay the bills, or to even save money to be able to afford
yeah.
um, a home or whatever.
Yeah,
So
I no, I absolutely agree. A short story. So I review some of the applications that come across my desk for some of my rental units. I still review them. I review them because I think that's great data for me personally to see what's out there, what the application pool is. And so one of the things I draw from that is just what you're saying. Folks who have, second jobs, gig jobs, or they depend more on assistance today than I've traditionally seen. So I totally resonate and agree with what you just said, Marco. Absolutely. I have a client who just purchased a duplex, and I think the best way to understand whether the economy is healthy or not is partially to become an investor in real estate, because he is getting such an education right now by looking at applications to fill his duplex. He's seeing these applications and he's coming back to me and he's like, Tony, these people, barely make what they need to be able to rent. And I'm like, yeah. So when the politicians say we have a great economy, we have a very healthy economy, in reality, uh, there's a lot of people who are just, getting by. And when a recession hits, because we've been in this boom for the last 15 plus years, we've been in a great economy for 15 plus years. When that goes the other direction and we enter into a recession, I think we're going to see a lot of people experience some pain. And I think the poverty rate is going to go up. And I think the news stories are going to really start to change, because there's so many folks who are so close to poverty, it's being underreported, which is quite sad.
okay, so as investors, you're an investor, I'm an investor, everybody listening to this show, watching us, listening, are investors. um, how do we prepare for what we just talked about? How do we address this issue as an investor? How do we prepare to deal with it going forward? Everybody's in a different place. Some people are very
Yeah.
sophisticated, they're financially successful. Others are newbies just getting started, want to get started. Many people are in between. And then even if you are an investor, active investor right now, it's good to pay attention to trends and the economy and the world stage, um, so we can adapt. Like maybe we have to make a shift in what we're investing in, or how aggressively we are investing in things. So how do we prepare and adapt as investors?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I'm in the rental space, and I know there's a lot of folks out there who have seen the prices go higher and higher, and it's tough to cash flow on some of these properties. But we are still buyers. We feel so strongly in the rental market that it's going to continue to thrive. That it's just we're buyers. We just purchased down in outside Miami a 153 unit apartment complex back in May, where we're looking to grow. We may hit some bumps in the road. So, there may be a period of time where, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, there may be some softness in the market, right? In the rental market. But we're not looking, we look at that, but we're really looking at, where are we going to be in 5 years, 10 years? Where's the property value going to be in that amount of time? So we like these assets. The other reason why we like these assets is when we do hit this recession, which we will, it's just business cycles, we will encounter it. The politicians are going to come to the table with money. They are going to create money like you've never seen before for these welfare programs to be able to support their voter base, really, because they're buying those votes, right? So they're going to support their voters with refund checks, with welfare programs, and that money is going to be created out of thin air, right? And so what that does is that does create inflation when you have more dollars and circulating. That is going to create inflation, which will push up the value of these properties. We saw it just happen over the last 3-4 years during the post COVID spending spree by the federal government. That's what we saw. We'll see it happen again in the next go round. And it's the best way to protect yourself, protect your purchasing power as an individual, as your freedom you want to protect. You want to protect that purchasing power. So even if things get more expensive, say a new car costs $100,000 in the future, well, the building that you purchase or the single family that you purchased for 300K is now worth 7 or 800K, right? So your purchasing power has been protected through this inflationary period, such that you can now go ahead and afford that new car should you need to buy it, right? So I love these assets that will protect us from inflation, but also I'm just a huge believer that Renter Nation is just going to get stronger. Rents are going to continue to go up, right? I mean, you look at, I have some properties down in Florida, and I look at those properties and I say, okay, you know, one is a single family home, 1,600 square feet. If somebody had to buy that home and pay the property tax and the insurance, all that sort of stuff, they'd probably be looking at a normal person would be looking at probably $4,000 a month to be able to afford that space. Okay. Now I rent it out for $2,700, right? 2,700. So there's still a lot of room to grow that rent from 2,700 a month to $4,000, right? So I think those rents are going to continue to go up. There's plenty of room before the renters say no. I'd rather buy. Right now, it's more affordable for them to rent than it is to buy. And so
Hmm.
until those rental prices get closer to $4,000 in today's dollars, I think I think the rental market's going to continue to be strong in the long term here. So that's why we're still very bullish on rentals.
I think a lot of listeners are curious if they even know about it, hear about it. The whole concept of rent controls. Like there's mixed feelings about that depending on what side of the fence you sit on. I mean, if you're if you're renting or you're a tenant, it sounds good, and it's a political football. And I don't want to get deep into politics or anything like that. It's an unbiased show. But you can say whatever you want. You're my guest. What are your thoughts about rent controls? Good, bad? I mean, is it helping? Is it hurting? You can almost read anything you want about it. Supporting it or against it. But what are your thoughts about rent control? Good, bad? Is it a trend that's going to continue?
So I do think it is a trend that's going to continue. More and more cities, towns, states are putting some form in place. So I think if you're an investor, I think you need to spend some time researching the topic, understanding where your city, town, state stands in terms of rent control, maybe what some sister towns and cities are doing, right? Because it gets legs. Once it's in one city, it can jump to another. So I think as an investor, you have to have a certain amount of put some research time into that for your own sake, because I think it is going to continue. People are going to continue to have this need for housing, right? And the politicians are going to step forward. A couple of things that we're doing to protect ourselves is one, we're staying away from GSA loans, government sponsored agencies, right? Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, things like that. Because what we're concerned about is if you have a GSA loan, then because you have one of those, they may be able to enforce a certain type of rent control on you if you have that type of loan. Because at the end of the day, they own the mortgage, they own the note, they own the home, right? So we're staying away from that. We're just dealing with other types of lenders. Or investor money. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing we're doing is, which is unfortunate, is we are staying away from like the Section 8 programs, because that's another way where they can enforce rent control. Is, hey, a two-bedroom, we can get 1,800 for a two-bedroom today. But if they say, oh, when you flip that unit, the most you can get is, 1,825. Yet if I remodel it, I know I can probably get 2,000, and they're saying, no, no, for Section 8, the best you're going to get is 1825. And so they're really cutting me off at the kneecaps here in terms of being able to increase my rent if I stay with Section 8. So it's maybe not necessarily happening today, but if you have a tenant in one of your units that is Section 8, and historically we used to be able to go to Section 8 and say, hey, we want to increase the rent X amount, in the future, they may not be so kind to those increases. So that's why we're unfortunately starting to stay away from Section 8. And so, you ask, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I mean, this is my business. I see it as a bad thing. We who are invested in real estate, we're capitalists, right? We want to improve the property to be able to increase our rents. And if they don't allow us to increase our rents, what's going to be our motivation to renovate a property? To beautify either the surroundings, right, to help the neighborhood, right? We've done some great things to some properties that the neighbors come out and they're like, this is great, you really helped my property value go up because you really beautified the neighborhood by taking care of the exterior. Yeah, we do that. But if we have rent control, I'm going to be less apt to do those sort of things. So I think with rent control, the whole experience as a renter is just going to get worse. Everything from just the quality of the property to the quality of management of the property will probably come down. So I don't think rent control is the answer. I think going back to these to the cities and towns, allow them to have more flexibility. They need to take it upon themselves to have more flexibility to change zoning requirements. I have properties with acres of land that they won't let me build any more housing on because they already say I exceed density requirements. I'm like, well, then change the law. I want to build. Even if you say, okay, Tony, you can build places, but it needs to be for low income housing, or it needs to be workforce housing, or however they want to define it. Okay, let's have some negotiation here. Right now, there's none. There's no. You can't do it. And I think that's really where it needs to change, is at the city and town level with the planning boards, to have more flexibility with land use codes, density requirements, things like that.
Right. Um, so maybe a couple more questions as we wrap up. Let's kind of like talk about some actionable type stuff that investors can take away and utilize. A lot of your book talks about, the freedoms that are at risk, or the freedoms that are being taken away, and constraints. We could even call them obstacles and roadblocks. And as investors, I think it's important that we identify and overcome those whatever's thrown our way. I mean, that's what we do as investors, and that's especially what we do as entrepreneurs. We're constantly being thrown challenges, obstacles, roadblocks, and it's like a problem that needs to be solved every day or every week or every month. So as investors, we need to be able to identify that, and because it can impact our personal financial freedoms. What would you, I mean, this is a whole topic, it could be an entire podcast episode, but what kind of steps, actionable steps, would you provide, advise, share, if you will,
Yeah.
for us to be able to identify and overcome that stuff?
Yeah. So again, I think it comes down to how an individual defines freedom. I'll take a tangent here, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about the Airbnb
Yeah.
market for maybe some viewers who are interested in
Yeah.
that. Right. I look at Europe. I enjoy going to Portugal. I enjoy going to Spain. I enjoy, the food and the architecture and all of that. But when I look at those places, I see also what they're doing with their, let's call it Airbnb market or short-term rental market out there. They are no longer approving licenses for short-term rentals because they have such an affordability issue out there. And so, I just extrapolate that and I look at this country here and I say it's going to continue to get worse in terms of affordability. So, if you're a first time investor or maybe looking to have some more freedom in your life to be able to say, hey, I want to go to Florida, a month out of the year. Wouldn't it be great if I had an Airbnb down there so I could go down there and enjoy it for a month and just have a better quality of life as an individual, more freedom to spend my time in 1 month in Florida and maybe go back home to Ohio or wherever somebody may live, right? Um, you know, I look at these trends, worldwide, Portugal, Spain, where they're going with their short-term rentals, and I look at it in here and I say, we have such an opportunity still here in this country to go off and buy properties that are we got to make sure that they cash flow, right? That's priority number one. But if you can buy an Airbnb today, be able to get that license and be able to cash flow, don't wait. Do it today before the rules, before the things change that don't allow you to do it, right? There's been things like, we also talk about the 1031 exchange. Every time that comes up for a discussion, I don't think it's going to get approved in terms of taking away that 1031 exchange. For folks that aren't familiar with that process, when you sell a property, you can then take those proceeds and purchase another property without paying taxes on the profit that you made on the
Right.
on the original property, right? So there's an exchange that you can do that eliminates the need for you to pay taxes on that capital gain, which is great. That's called a 1031 exchange. And so every time that comes up in front of Congress, it's kind of like, if that goes away, that's going to be an inflection point where we look back and we say, wow, those were the good old days where we could actually exchange properties, not pay taxes, and be able to get into a better property, right? So if you have a property today and you're looking to get into either a better class of property or a bigger property or a commercial property, leverage the 1031 exchange. I don't think it's going to go away, but you never know. Or it may change. It may change where you do end up paying some capital gains on those on that profit, right? Right. Look at these things that may change and say, we have such an opportunity today. Whether it be with Airbnb licenses, you can pretty much get those. If it's zoned properly, you can get those. Pull the trigger on something like that if that's the type of investor you are, and that's the type of freedom you want to create for yourself for the future of mobility, vacationing, golfing, whatever you like to do, right? And then the 1031 exchange is another thing I share with folks. Don't get stuck. Don't get married to your properties and never exchange them for a better property or a bigger
Right.
property, a better cash flowing property. I took one property. This is amazing. I took one property that was cash flowing just $1,000 a month, and I exchanged it for a property that was cash flowing $7,000 a month. It was amazing. I tell that story, and it's like, I really want to encourage folks not to forget about those things that exist. Now, if you're a person who, again, there's so many different opportunities. You can have a rural property in Central America and put up a cell tower in your backyard
Yeah.
and be able to rent that tower space to T-Mobile, to Verizon, to different companies, right? You can generate anywhere from $1,200 to $4,000 worth of cash flow from having a tower in your backyard, right? Just a tower, right? I'm looking at RVs right now, and you'll say, Tony, what the heck? You're looking at RVs. This is crazy. But the RV industry, during COVID, everybody was hopped up on something to go buy an RV. You know what? Now hotels are back opened up. The flights are now available. People aren't using their RVs as much. The RV market has crashed. So you can pick up like over $100,000 RV for like 36K.
Wow.
That's like money all day long. So I'm thinking about, like, maybe I'll start an RV park, right? I'll just go buy these RVs for like 30 cents on the dollar and start an RV park for folks, right? So you have to get creative these days, but those are some things I'm looking at. If you're more of a like a sophisticated investor, we had spoken about, I know you deal with folks, I deal with folks who have like millions of dollars they want to invest. You know what? You really have to be integrated at that level with folks who study the market, who understand the macro space, who understand demographics, who understand migration patterns, right? I mean, we're down in Florida because
Yeah.
1,200 people a day are moving into Florida, right? They need a place to live. There's not enough homes. They're not going to go live under a bridge. Chances are they're going to be renters. So
Yeah.
1,200 a day, that's why we're in Florida. And so we're going to continue to buy there. But yeah, if you're more of that sophisticated investor, you want to team up with others who are really looking at data to be able to help you invest in the proper places.
Okay, so just let's wrap up with this question here. How you talk about different ways to essentially supercharge your path to freedom in your book, goes from, discipline to leverage, human synergy is what you refer to it as, scalability, risk assessment, and then, just strategies and probabilities. What would you say is right now, here today, the best way for an investor to supercharge their path to freedom? You don't need to talk about all of it, but if you were to focus on one specifically today
Yeah.
to start with, where should you put your time, energy, and mental, capacity?
Without a doubt, it's discipline.
Okay.
Without a doubt. If you don't have the discipline to say, "Hey, I'm going to go buy a book," and go do it, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to do that these days with a cell phone and Amazon, and right, so easy to do it, right? If you don't have that discipline, chances are things just fall apart. If you don't have that discipline to say, "I'm going to call 3 investors a day," right? I, thing you just don't have the momentum, right? If you don't have that discipline to say, I'm going to go to one event a month to be able to network with people, right? To be able to grow my network, grow my education, grow my sphere of influence. Just if you don't have that discipline, things kind of fall apart. So that's the big thing for me is staying disciplined in a lot of different ways. For me, it's exercise. I need to continually motivate myself to be disciplined. To say, okay, every day I'm going to get out there. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do something to have better health, because I can have all this freedom, but if my health is poor, then that impacts my freedom. So I need to take care of my health. And with that comes discipline. So I need folks to really think about that and say, if they want to do better, if they want to do different, where have they been less disciplined than they should have been? And make some changes there.
Yeah. I guess that sounds like common sense.
It does, but I'll be honest. I mean, I do have trouble sometimes with that discipline. But what I do is I take a look and say, why am I not disciplined on some of those things? Like for example, I say I'm not really a capital raiser. I don't like to raise money. It's just kind of like not what I do. I like talking about the asset and doing all that stuff. So if I'm not disciplined to raise capital in my business, then I need to go find somebody who is, right? So I can't procrastinate on that. And if I am procrastinating, I need to ask, why am I
Yeah.
procrastinating, and go fix that problem. If I'm procrastinating because I don't want to go do my workout, I need to fix that. Maybe I got to get a personal trainer to kick me in the butt to say, okay, or maybe now I'm paying for it, right? Maybe I'm now paying, $100 a month to be able to have a personal trainer. Now I feel obligated because I'm actually writing a check to be able
Mhm.
uh, to have a personal trainer. I feel obligated that I need to use this service. I need to get out of bed. I need to go exercise. And so, yeah, if you're not being disciplined, you really need to assess why. And if it's because of procrastination, because of some reason, you got to look at why you procrastinating and go get
Yeah.
help there.
Yeah. It's a good question. A question I think everybody needs to ask themselves at some point in time, because No one's perfect. We all procrastinate and we lack discipline at some things, some of the time, maybe all the time. But Tony, this has been great. Before you give out, your information as far as how people can find you or follow you, just going to ask you, is there a final comment or a takeaway you want to leave us with?
My big thing is I always want folks to take action. So hopefully we've provided your listeners here tons of
Yeah.
value. That's our goal, is value. They don't come here to listen to my weird Boston accent. I don't think they do. So hopefully they get a ton of action, a ton of value out of this, and then take some action. Right? Please, Marco and we don't derive an income from doing these podcasts. We do them for you. We really want to help people. We both serve our communities. We want to help. And so please, if there's some good nuggets in here, go find some action to take on those and create more freedom, create more income for yourself, more wealth, more goodness for you and your family, more abundance of everything. That's what we want for the audience.
Cool. Tony, I appreciate you coming on. This has been great. Tell our listeners how they can follow you and get more information.
Well, the best thing they can do is go to my website, dirtybootscapital.com. They can see all that I do there, dirtybootscapital.com. If they have a question for me, or they just want to touch base or learn more about something or other, there's a place there where they can, get a free session with me, a free meeting. Just schedule it there. If they want to send me an email with a question or a comment, feel free. My email address is Tony Lopes with an S, Lopes, Tony Lopes @dirtybootscapital.com.
Cool. That's awesome. Tony, I appreciate you taking the time today. This has been great. Thank you. Great book. I'm looking forward to finishing it. I started and I haven't finished it yet, but it's been good. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Marco. This was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.